reason people never get below the surface to where true joy is they get the band-aids for happiness, but the band-aids peel off. And I'm not just talking about addictions. True joy is felt no matter how low and how bad your circumstances are. You still feel joy. It's not elation. It's a level of joy and peace knowing the other side is going to be okay and better than what you're dealing with today. But because people want to avoid pain and always have pleasure at all costs, that's really pretty much it.
Hello, welcome back. This is Andreea Parc.
And Alexa Dumitru.
And this is Alive.Again podcast. It's a podcast where attorneys and other professionals meet to discuss real life challenges and how our decisions shaped our journeys. Today's guest is a stroke survivor turned life thriver, an author, a transformational coach, a licensed professional counselor, a single mother who uses faith, humor, and courage to help women tap into their divine design so they can live with confidence, purpose, and worth, just as they were created to be. Welcome, Sharon Heno. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. Wow, I'll just have you do my introductions all the time. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to meet you and be here.
It's just a little bit of who you are and what you do and what you stand for.
And you did it so beautifully. When you said stroke survivor to life thriver, it took me back to, because I was very young when that happened. And there were so many more lessons that would come my way through situations, circumstances, choices I would make. It's funny because those events, pivotal and critical in my life, and what I teach women is they are part of what makes us, but they don't define us.
So let's start from the beginning now that you mentioned that took you back.
Because in my work, I take people back to their birth story, right? Because I do believe that that has a profound impact on how people perceive, receive, and deliver information through the course of their life. I'm not talking about in vitro work. I know that is a form of psychology, and I've certainly studied that, but acknowledging your birth story really has a profound impact on everything else that follows. And so I'd love to share a story, if that's okay.
Yes, please do.
Please.
So, because I can talk, ladies. I can be a runaway train.
That's what a podcast is for.
So it was funny because I spent much of my life, I come from a very strict Catholic, raised in the South family, and of course that has a ton of input. Professionally, of course, I'll share that we learn that most of our information that's learned is before we're 5 years old. Actually, the data shows earlier than that, which is kind of insane, right? So in my work, I'll be like, well, who are your primary caregivers and what did that look like? And through my own work in hypnotherapy and doing some work, I had the experience of going back further than that. It was really an incredible exercise. But what I discovered, and I've done the exercise with people, having them do the timeline of their life, I went back to my birth. And what I recognized was I was born in the middle of a car accident. I was born at 6 months, 24 weeks, which is, just a little over halfway baked. I had a lot of development to do. I was taken from my mother. Obviously, she needed to be cared for, and I needed to be cared for. And I would spend the rest of my and the pregnancy in, thank goodness, an incubator. That 1969 is the year that the incubator for preemies was put into hospitals. And fortunately, they had one at West Jefferson where I was brought to, and I would spend 3 months there, which is funny because story of my life, I'm always in a rush. Hurry up, get there, and then you wait. But I did learn chaos. I learned scratching and scraping to survive. I learned the world is a scary place. I didn't learn loving arms initially, not because my parents didn't want to give it, but in those days, they didn't let parents into that space, right? So what I knew were tubes, doctors touching with gloves through, right? So there were things that I came to recognize that impacted the way I would perceive. And then I was very sick as a child. Being born that young, you have autoimmune things, and that didn't even have a label then. I was born in 69. And so, but what I realized is until I went back and really was able to hold that baby in that philosophical way and let her know she was safe, chaos just followed me. I mean, it literally, and I just drew more and more in. And unfortunately, I didn't realize this until way later in my life. But to recognize, I had done the work, I had done the healing over these other situations. However, a lot of these situations happen because of the chaos I would subject myself to or allow into my container, if that makes sense. And so doing the training and going through it, I was just floored. And then like that, now I'm not selling hypnotherapy or anything like that, but I do in my work with people encourage them to go back and write. The first thing on that timeline is your day of birth. It's not about writing good or bad events, it's pivotal events. And then we just go and walk through and decide what are the attachments we put to them.
Yeah. And rewrite the story.
Yeah, well,
because we live by the stories that we tell ourselves.
Right. And then you're drawing, whether you believe in law of attraction or faith or earth, wind, and fire, what you are accustomed to and what you know, you're drawing that to you. If I say, go out today and let me know in a week how many orange cars you're going to see, I guarantee you never see an orange car. We're going to see an orange car today. So is everyone that's listening to this, because we've put in our attention, right? It's putting the intention. Now, the divine, God for me, can come in and alter that at any given moment. However, we do have to remember we have human free will, human nature, right? And lots of times he lets us walk the walk so we can be here to share our stories. You have a profound story,
Yes.
which, incredible.
Definitely. Without me being here to tell the story, so many other people would not have realized their own story and their own pitfalls and their own blind sides.
Well, the blinders get put on. I feel we put the blinders on because of the experiences, right? We don't want to ever, blinders are guardrails, whether it's through our lessons learned, but a lot of times we use it to avoid. Blinders and guardrails really need to be more guides. But blinders, I'm like, take the blinders off, right? Because then you're limiting the view. You use the word pitfalls, and I love that word because I would challenge, and, as we sit here and Alexa, you're so young and you're going to have more discoveries. Those pitfalls are discoveries. I will tell you through the times I fell, and I'll get to the stroke story, right? That's fast forward 20 years from the birth. But that happened, though the paperwork reads by a diagnosis and a medicine I was taking, it really happened by lifestyle choices, right? That discovery was I could not continue living the life I was living if I wanted to remain here on earth. It was a divine intervention, but also I had to, really to make the changes, own the pitfalls I had stepped that led up to that day, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so the pitfalls are really, I feel, gifts from God that we stumble. But as we're picking ourselves up and dusting ourselves off, we're giving a grace period to really figure out how to do it again. And I mean, when I had the stroke, and this was after all other kind of stuff that had happened, like there's a book, Unstoppable Sass. You can read a large number of the stories in there, and I try to tell them with humor. But the stroke came after I had put a lot of wear and tear on my system from the eating disorders I had subjected myself to in my teen years, sex, drugs, rock and roll, you rolling with the best of them. And it was, there were no warning signs. I was still rolling, and I literally hit the wall and collapsed, and no, not able to walk, talk, told I would never walk again. I would never operate beyond a third grade level. I was in a wheelchair for over a year. I had to learn how to essentially crawl, speak, read, bathe, brush my teeth, how to start over. Never went back to, I'm not going to say sex, but drugs. Yeah. I am a single mom, so there's more to the story. What's out there?
Basically, took responsibility of your own life.
Yeah, and it's funny because American Heart Association had me as their keynote speaker for their Go Red, which is about stroke awareness and heart conditions. And I am born with mitral valve prolapse, and they attributed it to birth control. That marriage of those two not being a good formula. This was before that they had the understanding of the birth control, the risk, and you had to be tested for it. They pretty much just gave it out. And I'm not blaming any of that, but also was doing a lot of other things that factor into that equation. So lifestyle, that's the part I have to own. I could stay the victim and be like, oh, the birth control, oh, I was born with the heart murmur. Those are two factors that the science points that is a higher risk. Myself, it also says if you smoke, if you drink, and you do drugs, it can happen too. And so I had the trifecta. Of course, not that I need it today, but couldn't get a prescription for birth control to save my life forward a couple years. I get the next pitfall of my life, which was a beautiful lesson, and that's my daughter. And that was probably the most life-changing for me because it took the focus from self-serving to caring for, not in a dependence. And I think you could probably sit in there with your daughter. It's not a codependence it just takes you out of yourself.
Yeah.
And y'all teach us
motherhood.
Yeah, motherhood. And we talked about this last time, a lot of women I work with, they feel lost when the motherhood stage ends. And it does end. We're always mom, mother, mommy, but that mothering ends and it rolls into more mentorship, which is very different. But they see motherhood as their purpose. And I shared this with you last time, Andreea, that it is not the purpose. It's one of the missions, the way you live that purpose out. I mean, my daughter has taught me so much about love and life in itself and about discerning and how to make better decisions. And I still mess up. Yeah. That's when the career mess ups come, right? When I talk about that.
You're only human.
Well, I always said I could write, I wrote my book, which is not a how-to. People really wanted the self-help book. And if I would have written the how-to when it first got brought to me, it would have been a very different book. What I decided to do was a motivational, inspirational people to really inspire them to take action, right? I mean, having the condition, experiencing the experiences, or horrific, can be horrific, whatever you want to call it, choosing not to deal with it and move beyond it is when people say they're a victim, but that's when they choose to be the victim. There is a step out of that. And so that's really what the book was about, right? And so, yeah, if I did the how-to, it would have been very different. But I always say I could also do a cautionary tale, what not to do to succeed in life. I am a late bloomer by all definition.
Now that you're talking about the book, what does Unstoppable Sass from Struggles to Strength mean to you?
So unstoppable sass, I'm so glad you asked that because a lot of people are like, why would you put that on it? Sass is such a disrespectful word. And actually, I'm such a nerd. I love going back to the origin of words. The original use of sass was flavoring. Sass back in Greek was adding of seasoning and flavoring. That's what it meant. When the United States was developed, right? And that really, once again, let's throw the American literature in. But when the patriarchal society took over, women were trying to have a voice but being shut down. That is when the word took on the negative connotation. I use it in the sense of I bring to life seasoning and flavor because I can look back at my stories from the birth story, whether you think that's a scary one or not, the horrible bullying that was physical and verbal in nature, the eating disorders, which I wound up in a mental hospital due to that, the rape, surviving violent crime, the stroke. I do share some humor in there because if you can't, and it's, no, rape is not funny. Suicide ideation is not funny. Death is not funny. Fear of loss of life, trauma is not funny. However, when we own our part and look at the steps that lead up to it, there are humorous moments that allow us to catch our breath. And I truly believe where those crises happen and take probably minutes of our life away, the laughter gives us those minutes back.
Yeah. And it's part of our humanity.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not laughing. When I speak and I share my story, there are some scary parts of it that I share, and people like, and I can see their faces, but then it comes in with a light breeze or a note to it that then adds the humor. And I feel like that helps people process with trauma in the brain. A lot of people that's why hypnotherapy can be such a great tool, or going in therapy and be cognitive behavior therapy, is because so much the brain shuts down. The body will block information out. And so if you're in the audience and you're hearing a horrific story and you're paralyzed, right, there needs to be a moment that softens it. And in our last conversation, Andreea, I shared one, and then what I would wind up using in my clinicals. And, it was a statement that allowed the human side to be able to acknowledge and own the actions.
And I think it's a method of coping.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, beside the societal aspect of humor, I think in our life, there were so many times when we were so helpless that there was nothing else we could do other than laugh at the situation.
Do you realize you just quoted an author? Do you remember the quote
No.
I read to you? Dorothy Dix, the epilogue of my book.
Yes.
I don't have the book on my lap, but I quoted her. She was a early author in the day that women couldn't put their names on their writings. And the open of this passage is, there were so many situations where I had to laugh or to cry. And so she chose the humor and the laughter. And that was really that gift. That little clipping from a newspaper came to me when I was recovering from my stroke. And I still have it today. I mean, that's been over 30 years. Hard to believe. Yeah, it happened at 26. I'm 56, so 30 years this year. Seems like another
timeless.
Life. It seems like a life ago, but yeah. So you literally just shared the word. So somebody that needed to hear that, hopefully hears it, because that's such a powerful what you just said.
Yeah, and I guess it's in the shared consciousness.
Absolutely. And that I think is part of the shared consciousness, whether we're aware of it on the forefront of the mind, or it's deeper in the subconscious or unconscious. I mean, our conscious mind operates off of the subconscious and the subconscious operates off the unconscious, right? It's all levels of what gets pushed up. And there is connection by people, even in the subconscious, right? People are drawn to each other, and whether they believe it's like they met in a past life, I believe it's more something wavelengths in the workings of the mind and energetically, the way we're pulled together. But that's also the piece of coming together to share these stories. It normalizes in a sense, but not normalizes to downplay, right? Normalizing. So, like when we had our conversation, you shared your story. And though I hadn't experienced that, I shared some pitfalls professionally wise that I wound up in, that just a little course of action, had a different outcome. But the normalizing is open. It opens our arms to receive each other. And so when I use the word normalizing, I think sometimes people hear it and they're like, oh, but you're taking how hard it was away. And I'm like, no, that's not at all. Right? Normalizing means that I'm opening my arms to you. I understand. There's no judgment.
Yeah.
I understand you, you understand me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's why this podcast is about the decisions that shaped our journeys, because all those decisions depend on the level of consciousness, on the level of awareness that we are at that point in our lives.
Absolutely.
And we're all on the same spectrum all the time. It's just depending on the emotional side,
right,
we can be more or less aware. So basically, if I work a lot with David Hawking's map of consciousness, and also you were talking about the trauma at the beginning of your life and how this affects people. I also work with Lise Bourbeau, the 5 wounds.
Yeah.
And those are also absolutely incredible things, that how it gets into our subconscious and we're making decisions based on some things that we're not even aware of.
Right. And that's where, people are like, I don't even know why I do that. Well, you do. You just have to sit with and go back and allow that information to come through. When you go back to my birth story and everything that happened after, well, no, not necessarily the eating disorders but they were all connected, right? Because I was in this survival mode, doing whatever I needed to do to survive. Meanwhile, my parents, when I get out of the hospital, what do? Well, they want to basically have me in bubble wrap. We had a situation a couple years ago before I moved up here to New York. We were at my house and we have the old movies, the millimeter ones, and my brother gave my dad the beautiful gift to have those all converted to, I don't even know, like flash drive, that you can actually watch them now without pulling out the screen and the movie,
Yeah.
So we're watching them. And my daughter was with, and we've always had the internal joke of the family. It's the Herald show, right? My brother's firstborn. Back then, still in the South, the boy was definitely that it's huge. And he wasn't only the first boy in our immediate family, but first boy of the grandparents, right? So the king has been born. And so the very first, like, it literally was the Herald show, and you could see his uncomfort, like, what is up? And then here comes baby Sharon, but she's still not there. Or they'd flash the camera and I'd be over there out of the way. And some people would think, my daughter's like, God, it almost looks like you were this kept away, abused child. But they were doing it out of a place of fear. They were doing it out of a place of protection, right? And then, of course, I was homeschooled because I would get sick. I would probably had pneumonia over a dozen times back in the hospital. So then when I go back to school, what happens? All of a sudden, I'm getting all the attention from the teachers and all the help. So what does that do with those kids? I'm this weak, right? You know what I mean? They don't get it. So then they start attacking. So it's just, and then of course, what happens? Teenage. Now I want independence. Well, that parents don't want that. I'm trying to do all kind of stuff to fit in, rebelling, what is the number one thing that happens with no boundaries in households? One of the top things that we've come to understand, eating disorders. It's a control thing, right? Textbook. There we go with that. Well, that puts more strain on the heart, right? Now, people say, all right, well, tell me about the rape. How is that your fault? I could own that because I wanted to be in a situation, in a place that I knew was not safe, a place I knew all the warnings were there, and I went anyway. That's what I want. Does anyone deserve that? No. No way, no how will I ever say that. However, right, I will own that despite all the red flags and everything that would have divinely let me not experience that, I pushed through it. And then there's more, but professionally, and then I came to decide, and this is what I want you to speak to, and particularly with the work that you do today. I learned to make decisions out of scarcity, out of desperation, and out of fear. Even in my early parenting days, it was because what I didn't want her to experience. And I really had to pull back. Unfortunately, I did this probably when Katrina hit, right? We were in that, and we actually wound up here in New York, not permanently, but my brother was here, so we stayed here, and it really gave me a different lens to look through. The people of New York opened with, they had gone through 9/11, they opened with open arms, and just the way they viewed the world was so different. It gave me an opportunity to take that back with me and really be like, I'm not operating from that anymore. And it was start of the switch, right? That was really like, I got to get this, and because I don't want to operate from this place. How many mistakes, pitfalls do we make when we operate from fear?
And that's exactly the work that I'm doing now, because I know that the decisions that we make, and now I'm speaking about myself, and of course I find a lot of attorneys in the same situation, but when we make decisions from fear, that those are the worst decisions.
And I want to say, yes.
No, but they are, absolutely. But there's only three emotions and feelings that really drive any human behavior. But go ahead, I'm gonna let you go, and then I'll come back to that one.
I want to say that we have this long-running theme in most of our podcasts about victimhood. And I really love the way that you put it, where you can acknowledge that, obviously it's not okay to be raped.
Right, use the word.
It's not something that you're looking to.
Yeah. No.
Right. And you acknowledge that, but also say that there are some things that I could have done differently that maybe it wouldn't have happened. Right. And that's obviously an extreme example.
But people are so afraid of minimalizing it, afraid to speak to it. I just said it, guys. Exactly. Be mad. Throw spaghetti at me. They're so afraid to minimalize it. We've gotten so afraid to talk about whatever it is. When I was a guest on it, I brought up the word rape, and they stopped the reeling of the podcast. Like, we can't say that. I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, it's,
How are we ever going to get to a place where we can speak about it?
No one deserves that.
And where people don't feel alone.
Right. No one deserves it. No one. There is nothing anyone can do to bring that up on themselves.
Right.
However, I have to own the life I was living, and the choices put me at a higher risk to be in a situation around a group of people that would even consider doing that, had an alternate to making the choice to not go, not be in that environment. You know what I mean? Like, and people will come back at me and be like, oh, but making that choice shouldn't have put you in that. Unfortunately, there are choices.
It does.
I'll say
you can't control what other people do.
Now, the other part about victimization, yes, I was a victim in that moment. I am no longer a victim of that. I refuse to let that situation define me. It was an experience. And the reason I can talk about it without falling apart is because it's an event. It's done. It's not forgotten. But there's no triggers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that people can learn and the only way that you can teach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, because some people would say, all right, so you experienced that, you made those choices. When your daughter wants to go do A, B, and C, I, I mean, you know, we're a week away from Halloween, right? Well, excuse me if I insult the young 20-year-olds, but I feel like every young 20-year-old puts a costume on and look like a hooker, right? I'm like, okay, why do we pick that? I did it. We do it. Does that put you at risk? No, that should not put you at risk. But if you're out till 4 a.m. in the morning and you hop on the subway and something bad happens, you know, like, I'm sorry, you're putting yourself at risk. Do you deserve it? No, absolutely not. What you wear, what you
But that's
do.
unfortunately the world we live in.
And so when I parent, um, I share, not to scare. She's going out with her friends on Halloween. I'm like, look, if y'all are out after midnight, which you probably will be, use my account, get the car home. Do not take the subway.
Yeah.
I don't go in and berate her with my story. It's just, so it's not parenting from fear. I have moms that work with me and they're still mothering their 20 something year olds. They're not mentoring. And I'm like, sharing what worked for you. Listen to the words. What worked for you and what didn't work for you is very different than telling them what they can, what they can't, or what they should or what they shouldn't. What they can and what they can't is dictating. Should and shouldn't is judging. What worked for me, right? Having those conversations. And I'm in a unique position to be able to live with my daughter today. Most people will be like, you're stifling her, you're in a way. I'm absolutely not. I have expectations. She has expectations. We live our lives together, but separate. As a single mom, I was working 2 and 3 jobs through most of her early childhood days. Thank God I had strong support, but I want to soak up every minute I can get. But I also recognize I'm not changing diapers and bottle feeding. She's watching what I'm doing and how I live.
That's how we are
You
too.
can tell by seeing the two of you. One day we'll get back on here and have mine have come. But
Yes.
she is very much not at all my personality. I love her personality. She is so funny, so quirky. However, everything you hear about actors, she is so introverted, so quiet, so reserved. But when she gets on that stage or in front of that camera, it just comes to life. People are like, how are you so confident? I'm like, because she is just weird enough to make it work. I love it. I love the weirdness. I love the quirkiness. There's just nothing I would change. And really, yeah.
Yeah. And if that is what makes her happy and fulfills her life, by all means,
Yeah.
let her do it. Let her try gazillion times. There were people who tried.
And
Who was it? It was an actor that was rejected
most of them,
500 times.
just about most of them, it's not the it's not the quick plan. Um,
Yeah.
and so one thing I will share, when I went back, right, and I had to parent differently, I'm not a stage mom. I'm gonna be honest. I like movies more than plays. I've said it. You know, we go to plays because she loves them. I'm like trying to keep the eyes open. Put Mission Impossible on. I'm loving it. Um, when I went back and started recognizing that there was this different way, we have a joke in my family. If my parents parented me in a way, I did the complete opposite because I wanted to test that water. My parents were very authoritarian, their way, the highway. Once again, it was out of fear and love to protect me, but that's the angle. So in parenting and really going forward in life, because what you do in one area, you have to do in all. But I hadn't done it in my professional life. It was probably doing it in my personal, but at that point, personal was her. I didn't parent from fear, and I allowed her to think and do things differently. She's dyslexic, dysgraphic, ADHD, so there was a lot of different. And growing up in Catholic school, very regimented, it was like a revolving door. Miss Heno, please come to the school. You know, it was like not behavior, but just the way she would do things was different. And I was fine with it. And when she started in high school, she had won a competition that she wound up in a Broadway camp up here. And she started getting a lot of attention, not as a child actor. I was like, I'm not doing any of that. I don't have time, the money, any of that. You could do the school plays. But she wound up getting full scholarship, got accepted to every conservatory here in the city, and one in Los Angeles. But I was like, that's too far. I can hop on JetBlue. I remember the school was very opposed because it was a college preparatory school. And I knew college in the traditional sense was not for her. And that was profoundly different in the community that I went to. You went to school, you went to college, you got married, and you have babies. And here she was, COVID happened her senior year. That fall at 18 years old, she packed up and moved here to New York in the middle of it all. And so, once again, I had to let go of any fears I might have. Because if I was parenting like my parents, hell, she wasn't doing that, particularly with COVID. Going into the beast of the belly, you know what I mean? The belly of the beast. I do, the one residual for my stroke is I do say things backwards. So if there are some weird words, just laugh at them. Yeah. But yeah, so I had to profoundly not operate from fear. And honestly, I'm still practicing that. Today, it's more apparent in my career in finance.
I noticed a lot of similarities between us.
Yeah.
And as an artist myself, I can trace back where I got that in my genes. Can you trace back where she got that?
So I mean, she was always very artistic with like the hands. My brother was in theater, and now I was not taking her to plays when we would come up here because one, back then they had stricter rules about what kids could and could not go to, particularly when they were in stroller age. Today, I think it's kind of a free for all, whether that's good or bad. But back then there was, so I was often like out and about with her. But my brother, I remember, I think she was like 3, maybe 4 for Christmas. He and his wife got her a trunk of costumes. And I'm gonna be honest, you could not keep clothes on this kid. I mean, and it was hot in the South, right? New Orleans is, but she would just take those clothes off. But these costumes, she just loved it. I have some photo sessions that, Mom, we do portraits with you guys, but the photographer was always like, the camera loves this kid, but when I make her pose, it's like something else. She just always had imaginary play. And so I did not think the acting thing, but I knew something creative, right? And she was pretty independent thinker. Unfortunately, in school, she too got bullied. I will share, and I share it in the book, due to financial. And then after Katrina, when I moved back home, I was with my mom and dad, actually right prior to Katrina, but I moved back in with my parents, and one of the requirements was if they were going to help me with her, that she would go to the parish school, that my mom is involved with the church. That's a story for another day. And this school was the very school that had just caused me so much abuse and so many problems. And I still kick myself to that I would allow my daughter to go there because I didn't know how I would do it differently. And she herself was subjected to the same abuse by staff. I don't know what it is, the culture of the school. I don't think it's in all Catholic schools, but this particular one, for whatever reason, I'm not going to say the name, but this one just throughout history, actually, even professionally, I had people wind up in my chair discussing the abuse. I hope it's not there today, but it just really, and so that killed part of her spirit, but I feel like also through that, she found her safety in her able to express herself through theater, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
So, but yeah, I remember that trunk of costumes, so I was like, But at one point she wanted to be a equestrian ballerina, and she's like 5'8", I used to think she was taller, but the doctor's like, no, 5'8", but she kind of a bull in a china cabinet. So I knew the ballerina thing was not horse riding and jumping, beautiful. She could probably be an Olympian, but the cost of that got too much for me to continue.
I want to bring you back to, you wanted to mention the three main emotional.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So we close the circle.
Yes. So fear is probably the bigger driver. Pleasure. So happiness, not joy. Joy and happiness are very different. Happiness, and the other one is still a negative. And it's whether it's sexually driven or not, right? It's because they'll say sex, food, and sleep. That's the only thing. Well, I connect to emotions is more the anxious. But if you look at what drives fear and anxious, it's lack of something or to prevent something. Happiness is grasping. And the reason people never get to below the surface to where true joy is they get the band-aids for happiness, but the band-aids peel off. And I'm not just talking about addictions. True joy is felt no matter how low and how bad your circumstances are. You still feel joy. It's not elation. It's a level of joy and peace knowing the other side is going to be okay and going to probably be better than what you're dealing with today. But because people want to avoid pain, right? And always have pleasure
At all cost.
at all cost, that's really pretty much it. So I don't know if I tied it into emotions. I may have said that incorrectly, but it does go to the pain pleasure principle. But the problem is those two drivers are not why we're put here on earth. Neither. Avoiding one and seeking the other will never lead to true peace and joy.
Yeah.
Does that bring it full circle?
Yes, definitely does.
And I try to, people do ask, well, what brings you to joy? It's a state of being. Nothing brings it to me.
Nothing. Yeah.
It comes from within, and it's just a state of being. Oh, I need to write that
Then you
down.
can have an off day.
I need to write that down. Yeah, you can. No, I do. I'm like, that might be another, because that's what people are like, well, how did you? And that's the other thing. You have to stay out of the how. If you live in the how could be my voice today on this podcast for someone, and tomorrow it will be something else. You have to stay out of the how. That would be the greatest thing I could tell anyone is I release it to God. He puts the how, the when, like that's his. I just do what he tells me to do.
You called yourself on your signature on the email unapologetic.
Yes. Once again, and not rude, right? I was probably a little sassy by modern definition growing up, particularly when I was trying to rebel and find my own footing in the world. Unapologetic, once again, we have those core truths of goods of the world. It does not mean I can go do and say whatever I want. What unapologetic for me is if my being me in speaking truth, and not just my truth, these are divine truths, whether, and not doctrine, I'm keeping this out of, this is not religion, it's just truths. Yeah. We discussed one here on the podcast. And I can't just be that and speak that. I'm not apologizing for that. Because I said the rape word and discuss that, I'm not going to apologize for that. That is a truth. What I said about victimhood, right? And I've been there. I've walked that walk. I am not going to say what it's like for you to be that, but I can say what it was like for me, and I can deliver what the truths are around it. And so unapologetic has nothing to do with being rude, disrespectful. If anything, it's being willing to open my ears and my arms to hear and bold enough to say what I've learned in a graceful way. And we have to shove our agendas down other people's throats. They don't hear us because we get louder. I always tell people, go back and deliver it a different way. You don't have to do it more loudly. You don't have to do it, in the face. And sometimes people just can't hear it. They're not ready to receive it. So unapologetic is, delivering truths with grace.
I think a lot of cultures put women down.
Yeah.
And I've had that struggle recently where it's about how can I be unapologetic to myself? And how can I have respect towards myself?
Well, you have to respect yourself first.
Right. But I respect myself in the, day-to-day terms. Obviously, I do. But there are small aspects of my life where I do things where I just step slightly on my own beliefs and my own beliefs about myself, and I want to get out of that habit.
Do you feel like when you say that, do you feel like you're conforming to fit in, or feel like you're quieting your voice?
Not necessarily. I think it's more of a quieting my own voice. For example, in my business, I have my own fashion brand.
Okay.
And I recently redid my whole brand and rebranded myself. I have been putting off working on my website. It's up there, but I have put off doing the real work behind it.
What are you avoiding?
My theory is fear of success. I'm scared that somebody's going to put in an order and I'm not going to be able to fill it because I'm by myself. I'm not going to be able to.
So you're not afraid of success, you're afraid of failure.
I guess so.
You're afraid of failure. You're not afraid of success. Now, there might be a layer of that. And so you have to look at, and Mom, I'm going to use you an example. You have to use, what does success look like for you? Well, one thing you saw firsthand, even though it's not the truth, success means you go to jail. Success means you wind up in these high-performing jobs with these high-performing people put in these situations to make decisions that maybe you're not 100% clear of and you could mess up. Right? Fear of failure is, if I don't fulfill that order, what are the ramifications, right? Like, what comes from that? You have to stay out of that and surrender it. So the how, and this is so hard, when I say surrender, and I don't know whether it's God, earth, like, I don't know, hopefully, and I will say this boldly, you believe that something created you and created you for a purpose, right? That you didn't just all of a sudden poof, you're here and you're your own entity, right? Like, you're put here for a purpose. Your fashion industry is how you're living your purpose out. That is not the purpose itself. And so the what ifs, you have to remove those and plug in the information. This is cognitive behavior therapy 101. Plug in the information you do have today. Because if it starts with what if, or a question that you don't have a concrete answer, you get catapulted into the unknown, and that spikes the fear. When you get stuck in the past, right, the paralyzing past and the guilt and the shame, that's when you get the roots of depression and paralysis from moving forward. So for you, it's not so much stuck in that, but it's around fear of failing, but maybe fear of success because of what you were taught, but what you watched. And that's not the truth. You know, you and your mom have had the conversations behind what the actual truth is behind that story in that season. And so the quieting your voice, I mean, marketers would say, you know, you've got to do this, you can't do that, you got, you know, it's all a freaking algorithm. Surrendering it is, I'm just going to put the website up there and I'm going to go work on it an hour a day. Whoever, whatever source is, I'm putting it in your hands to take it from there. Give me guidance and direction.
And I have moments of that where I fully surrender and I just go for it. And then I have moments where I just cannot bring myself to do it.
Yeah.
Which comes from the fear.
And surrender has to keep happening. It's kind of like you have the pot.
Discipline.
Yeah. And it's the hardest, right? Because we're not taught to do that. We're taught to
Right.
control, mitigate. You like that word? Mitigate all the problems, right? But that's what we're taught. However, this
Yeah.
is something that we have discovered is when we fully surrender it, we're releasing what we're doing, allowing for corrective measures to come in naturally and organically that will guide our steps.
You
Yeah.
call it surrendering, and I call it in my Apple technique letting go,
Letting go, yeah,
which a lot of people don't like the word letting
yeah,
go, but how I teach it is forgiveness and acceptance to myself.
yes,
It's okay, and I use it as radical acceptance, radical forgiveness. I forgive myself for the thoughts that come to my
yes.
mind.
And
I accept who I am now, and I accept that I can move forward and that I can make happen whatever I want in my life.
and we can, whether we
And we can.
whether it's and but it's that discernment that decides if it's the right choice, right? Like we do have a great deal of control of our own life and destiny. One thing, and it's the only time I'll throw Bible out on this, but it is biblical. Old Testament, so this is not just even Christian, right? This is whether it's Jewish, I'm not going to speak of the Torah. I don't know. I have not read that book, so I don't know. Well, no, the Torah is Jewish. The Quran, I have friends that are Muslim, so I don't know if it's in that one. But capture your thought, like retrain and hold your thoughts captive. So when you speak of discipline and surrender and happen to redo it, and I said it's a constant process, it is our job to take captive our thoughts. When the runaway train, we're going from A to Z with our thoughts and we're not stopping along the way. It's our job to reel it back in and to learn skills, master the skills, know the skills to quiet the noise and listen to the intuition.
And know that you have the divine protection to make this business and bring into the world the beauty and creation that you have in your mind.
That's the
Absolutely.
thing. I know it's gonna be there. I know where I'm gonna be. It's just how do I get there is where I'm a little lost.
What did you just say?
Going back to what Sharon
What did you
said,
just say?
hey, how?
Get out of the
The
how.
how.
That hasn't been revealed to you yet, but you have to get the website up. But you're
Yeah.
trying to get it all perfectly aligned and worked out, and there is no such thing. So I'm laughing because I just redid my website again because I've got everything condensed to Kajabi, right? For me, that's working right now. And I have a course that is my core course, and it's kind of a self-guided version of the work I do with people one-on-one. It's release, rewire, receive, right? It's actually release, renew, receive, but I reworded it rewire because it's releasing all the old, right? You can't bring new stuff in, which is why all the self-help programs and the smoking cessation, weight loss, they don't work because you're just adding more stuff into a container that's already full. So the release has to take place first. Then we rewire the mind, which is scientifically evidence-based through cognitive behavior therapy, right? We're using those tools to rewire. And then we learn how to sit and discern and receive. We don't go through life looking for the hows. Seek wisdom. We're always seeking wisdom, but we're not, the how gets revealed in just what we can do. The problem is everybody's like, I got the solution. Follow my step, which I guess you could say, well, you're doing the same thing with this program. Receive isn't me telling you how. It's conditioning you to have the practice and discipline to receive whatever is coming to you, which is what you want because source God, I'm going to say God for me, puts on our heart what he wants for us. how often do you want something and then like a week later it goes away? Well, that's because that wasn't really what he wanted for you. This business, there is something in that that is divine. It is meant to be. And just ask that, like, where do I go from here? Like, I need some steps. But I would think the first one is the website. Just get it up. So reason I share that is I'm still going in. I'm constantly tweaking. I have to re-record some stuff because the verbiage, I don't like the way it, so, and I laugh because the people that have the course are like, oh, she changed it again. The core is there, but sometimes the videos are more, updated. You said the there's another famous two words out there with starting with let out there right now, and she's making gold. Professionally and professional, and have a lot of people have come to me and been like, what are my thoughts? And I'm not sharing my thoughts on either of those. Some people that aren't ready to really move past will hear it as dismissive.
Yeah.
So when you say let go, just let go, maybe change the verbiage, the process of letting go, because they're hearing something, just like when I say normalize, people tend to feel what they have experienced as being dismissed. And that's why I use the release, because it is a process. We are processing, not spending decades there, but we're processing events and then we're putting it on the shelf. But I do think that let go, I mean, I love that song, Let It Go. But I do feel like some people just feel diminished and they're not ready to receive it. You don't have to change the program. You don't have to change the message, but maybe the way you say it so that they can hear it. Because it's really about what they're able to hear.
Yeah, to hear, right.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm like, did we wrap that up? This is so good. I mean, I could go on and on.
Yeah.
We can always do a second episode.
I'm open. This has been amazing. And like I said, I want it to be for your audience. And we didn't even get into career things, but I do feel like, as I tell someone, they're not separate. I mean, there are things that need different attention. I always have people create the pillars of their life. So it's like career, finances, relationship, these different pillars. However, if you're only focusing on one, it's going to crumble. What works in one area needs to be carried over to others. And if it's not working in one, chances are it's not working in another.
Yeah. So before we get to the last question, that is the signature question of the podcast, I want to ask you, where can people find you?
So
Please share.
Yes. So you can search me online, Sharon Heno, Heno, super simple. I'm on social media, same name, Facebook and Instagram. My book is at all your bookstore retailers online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you get your books. So yeah, I'm just Sharon, SharonHeno.com, or you can just Google my name. All good stuff, I hope, but you'll find me.
Yes, I will definitely link all of your information
please
to
do.
the description.
Yes, please do.
Yes,
and
definitely.
yeah, because I can say I am working one-on-one. I have like only 3 more spots available. Not that I'm really pitching that, but I really love just serving and helping. So.
And you work with women?
It's men as well. Actually, it's so funny. I started working out with just kids. And then I started working with families, and then started working with men and women, like in couples, and where I do less of that because but I'm a trauma specialist, right? So that's the core of the work I did, and I had to rewrite that myself because after doing trauma and national crisis response work for over 20 years, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need something else. And so God moved me into this direction. I did work with men, but because of my work in human trafficking, it was largely women in recovering work. In my cult work that I did, helping people escape like different religious cults and whatnot, it was men and women. But that's really the skills from that is where the rewiring. Stories for another day, but
We have to do another podcast so
Yeah.
we can talk about
there's a
your
lot of
career.
Yeah.
stuff up in here. All good. I've got, but it yeah. So yeah, but yeah, my
Yeah.
largely women because of the work, but no, I work with men as well. Yeah, I don't let them sit on their stuff so long.
And now the question.
Yes.
What is one activity in your life that makes you feel more alive?
Oh my gosh, one activity. It's when I walk in the parks. I absolutely love parks. I am not a camper. My idea of camping is the Holiday Inn, not that. Getting dressed, taking my big boy, I have a 100-pound English retriever, and just going to the park and just walking, maybe stopping at a sidewalk cafe, um, and just meeting the community. I'm definitely an urban person. I'm not a suburban or country person, but I do love urban developments and parks and walkability, walking, not for exercise, just walking, really, and interacting with animals. I don't do charity work. I write checks, but I don't do charity work because my house would be full of animals and then I get evicted. So I do donate to animals and hope to be able to do more one day, but I cannot work hands-on because I will take them off.
Yeah.
Two four-legged fur babies are looking at me right now, like with the wrap it up, mom.
We want to go out for a walk.
Well, this one, look, I'm gonna show you a picture. You see him?
Oh.
And then the other one over there, he's waiting for the walk. But yeah, that's the little guy. Ziegfeld and Sawyer Finn. Hysterical. So yeah, so walking,
Yeah.
getting outdoors, but like I said, in not necessarily going like hiking the mountains or anything like that. Like Central Park is my happy place. Absolutely love it, and I'm so blessed to live like a block away.
Yeah. Well, Sharon, thank you so much
Thank you
for
for
your
having me.
time
This was
today.
amazing.
Amazing. And we definitely need to schedule another one to talk about professions and to
Yes,
go even deeper.
even deeper. I love it. I mean, it's just such important conversations to be had, and there's so much information out there that scratch the surface, but sometimes I wonder, just because you experienced it, yes, it gives you a platform to share your story, and that is so necessary. But there is sometimes people are just sharing from a non-trainable source, and sometimes there's just so much information out there, and it's not always good. But yes, anyone who has experienced something, I think they're given a platform to use their voice, and, women come forth and share your stories.
Yeah, definitely. We're helping others by
Yeah,
doing so.
yeah. I mean, that's really what it's about. It's not to just, for a good read.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you for
so
having me.
much.
So, absolutely.
Thank you. Our listeners, thank you for listening. For more guests and more conversations, please subscribe and follow us. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.